My gym buddy posts photos of us with couple captions and strangers think we're dating. The breakup with Daniel happened on a Wednesday in February, 2 months before what would have been our 3-year anniversary. He packed his things while I was teaching my sophomore literature class, leaving behind a note saying he needed someone less consumed by work, less distant, less unavailable. I came home to an apartment that felt hollow and too quiet, and for the first time since college, I didn't know who I was outside of being half of a couple. My name is Riley Bennett, I'm 31 years old, and I teach English at Roosevelt High School in Portland. For 3 years, my identity had been Daniel and Riley, and without him, I felt grammatically incomplete. My best friend Vanessa told me to hit the gym and focus on myself, so I joined Powerhouse Fitness near my apartment, figuring physical exhaustion might help me sleep without crying. I hadn't worked out seriously since my 20s, and my first sessions were humbling in ways that made my muscles scream and my ego crumble. I couldn't do a proper push-up, couldn't run a mile without stopping twice, and felt like everyone was judging the out-of-shape English teacher struggling with basic exercises. But I kept going because the pain was the only thing that quieted my thoughts about Daniel's disappointed face. Then, during my 3rd week, a woman named Alexis Monroe approached me at the squat rack where I was attempting to lift the bar with terrible form. She had dark hair and a high ponytail, athletic build suggesting years of training, and a confident smile that felt genuinely friendly rather than mocking. She offered to spot me, and I accepted gratefully, embarrassed but desperate for help avoiding injury. Alexis corrected my form with patient explanations that made sense, then offered to train with me 3 mornings a week before I had to be at school. She mentioned she'd been lifting for 6 years and loved helping beginners discover their strength. We started meeting at 6, and Alexis had a structured approach that made workouts feel productive rather than aimless. She asked about my goals, and I admitted I mostly wanted to feel less like someone falling apart after a breakup. She nodded with understanding and said we'd build physical and mental resilience together. Her attention felt validating after months of feeling invisible to Daniel. After 2 weeks, she suggested documenting my transformation with progress photos for motivation. She pulled out her phone and took several shots of me by the weights, then suggested a photo together to celebrate our training partnership. I stood next to her while she took a selfie, both of us smiling. I didn't think about those photos until my coworker Lauren approached me in the teacher's lounge with her phone extended and a confused expression. She asked if I was dating someone new because her sister had sent her an Instagram post featuring me with a woman she didn't recognize. My stomach dropped before I looked at the screen. The photo showed Alexis and me at the gym, but the caption read, "Morning workouts hit different with Bae," followed by heart emojis. The post had over 4,000 likes and hundreds of comments from strangers asking how long we'd been together, complimenting us as a couple. I felt my face flush with embarrassment as I scrolled through comments where Alexis had responded ambiguously, never confirming or denying a relationship, but using language that encouraged the assumption. I texted Alexis immediately asking what the post was about and requesting she remove it. Alexis responded an hour later saying social media was about engagement and her followers loved couple content, that it was harmless fun and didn't mean anything. She added that I looked great and it was good exposure for both of us. I replied that I wasn't comfortable being presented as her girlfriend when I wasn't, that it was misleading and weird. She sent back a laughing emoji and said I was overthinking it, that everyone knew social media wasn't real anyway. I asked again for her to remove it or clarify we were just workout partners. She read the message but didn't respond. The next morning at the gym, Alexis acted like nothing had happened, launching into our workout routine without acknowledging my concerns. I brought up the Instagram post directly and she waved dismissively, saying we'd talk later, but right now we needed to focus on training. Halfway through, she asked another member to photograph us and I felt trapped. That evening, I checked Alexis's Instagram properly and felt panic spike through my chest. She had over 60,000 followers and had posted photos of us for 3 weeks with captions progressively suggesting romance. Things like, "My favorite training partner makes every rep worth it," and "Building our future together," with couple emojis. She'd created a highlights folder with both our initials filled with training videos edited to look like relationship content. Comments asked when we'd started dating, whether we lived together, how we met. Alexis responded to dozens but never directly confirmed or denied anything, using ambiguous language that let followers believe whatever they wanted. I felt violated seeing my image used to construct a narrative I hadn't consented to. My smile in the photos looked like affection for Alexis rather than satisfaction with workouts. People had found my personal Instagram and were messaging congratulations about the relationship. I called Alexis that night and explained as calmly as possible that the Instagram situation was getting out of hand, that people actually believed we were dating, and I needed her to post a clarification or remove the photos. Alexis laughed and asked why I was being uptight about social media, saying it was just content and nobody really cared. I said I cared because it was dishonest, and I wasn't comfortable being portrayed as someone's girlfriend without consent. She went quiet before saying, technically the photos were hers since she took them, that she had every right to post her own content, and I was being unreasonable trying to control what she shared. Her tone shifted from friendly to defensive with an edge that made me realize arguing might make things worse. She said we could discuss it more rationally tomorrow at the gym, that I was clearly stressed and needed to sleep on it. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I texted Alexis saying I needed to skip our session due to work obligations. She responded immediately asking if I was avoiding her, if I was really that upset about Instagram posts, and whether I realized I was throwing away my fitness progress over nothing. I didn't reply because I didn't know what to say that wouldn't escalate the situation. Within an hour, Alexis posted an Instagram story showing the empty gym with text overlay saying, "When your gym partner ditches you," with a sad face emoji, tagging my account and our gym location. Within minutes, I received messages from several of her followers asking if we'd had a fight, if everything was okay, offering relationship advice. I felt exposed and manipulated in a way that made my chest tight. I called my older sister Monica, who's a therapist in Seattle, and explained everything from the beginning. Monica listened carefully and then asked whether Alexis had ever requested permission to post photos of me, whether I'd explicitly consented to being featured with romantic implications, and whether I'd documented my requests for removal. I admitted I hadn't thought about consent or documentation, that I'd assumed basic courtesy would be enough. Monica explained that what Alexis was doing could constitute harassment or defamation depending on escalation, that creating false narratives about someone's relationship status without permission was ethically problematic, even if legally ambiguous. She suggested I document everything immediately, screenshot all posts and captions and comments, save text conversations where I'd asked Alexis to remove content, and write down dates and details. She said I should send one clear written request stating I didn't consent to being portrayed as Alexis's romantic partner and asking her to remove all posts suggesting that narrative. I spent an hour screenshotting concerning posts before drafting a careful message to Alexis. The message was direct but polite, stating I appreciated her training help, but wasn't comfortable being presented as her girlfriend on social media, that I'd prefer she remove photos of me or at minimum clarify we were only workout partners, and I hoped we could resolve this amicably. I sent it via text and Instagram. Alexis read both within 5 minutes but didn't respond for 3 hours. When she finally replied, the message was longer than expected, and immediately made me realize the situation was worse than I'd thought. She said she was hurt by my accusations, that she'd only been trying to help me after my breakup, and I was repaying her kindness by attacking her social media presence. She continued saying Instagram was her livelihood, that she made money through sponsorships depending on engagement, and couple content featuring me had significantly boosted her growth and earning potential. Alexis claimed I was trying to sabotage her career over my own insecurity about how social media worked. She said the photos were her intellectual property since she'd taken them, that she had every right to post them with whatever captions she chose, and if I wanted them removed, I'd need legal justification. The message ended suggesting I was overreacting and needed to consider whether my ego was more important than supporting someone who'd helped me when I was at my lowest. The emotional manipulation was so blatant it made me angry in ways I rarely felt. The implication I owed her continued access to my image because she'd been nice at the gym. I showed the message to Monica and watched her expression shift from concerned to seriously worried. She said Alexis's response contained several red flags, particularly monetizing content featuring me without permission, and the manipulation suggesting I owed her something. Monica recommended I send one final message stating clearly that I didn't consent to my image being used for commercial purposes, and continued posting would constitute harassment, then stop engaging and start documenting escalation. She suggested I might want to consult an attorney about cease and desist options if Alexis didn't comply, and consider reporting the situation to the gym since their facility was being used as backdrop for content I didn't consent to. I sent the final message Monica helped me draft, keeping it brief and legally clear about withdrawing consent. Alexis responded within 10 minutes saying I was making a huge mistake and would regret burning this bridge. I screenshot the exchange and didn't reply. The next morning, I canceled my Powerhouse membership and joined a smaller gym across town called Foundation Athletic, figuring removing myself from shared space would help establish boundaries. I felt relief driving to the new location for my first workout. The relief lasted 3 days before Alexis posted a story showing herself outside Foundation Athletic with a caption about finding her missing workout partner. My hands started shaking when I saw it because I hadn't told her where I'd switched, which meant she'd either followed me or tracked down my new gym through other means. The effort required suggested obsession beyond social media engagement. I went to Foundation that evening and spoke with the manager Derek, explaining the situation and showing him Alexis's Instagram posts featuring me without consent, the messages where I'd asked her to stop, and the story showing she'd tracked my location. Derek's expression was serious as he reviewed content, saying this definitely qualified as harassment under their code of conduct. He offered to preemptively ban Alexis from the premises and gave me his direct cell number to contact him immediately if I felt unsafe. For 5 days, I worked out without incident, slowly relaxing and believing maybe the situation had resolved itself. Alexis hadn't posted new content featuring me, hadn't sent messages, and seemed to have moved on. Then on Monday morning, I stopped at the coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment, a place called Copper Cup, where I went most mornings before school. I was waiting for my order when I saw Alexis sitting at a corner table with her phone pointed toward me, clearly filming. She smiled and waved like we were friends running into each other by coincidence, calling my name loud enough that other customers turned to look. My entire body went cold with realization she'd either followed me here or monitored my patterns to figure out where I went regularly. I walked over to her table and asked quietly what she was doing here. Alexis's smile didn't falter as she said she'd discovered this amazing coffee shop, and wasn't it such a coincidence we both liked the same place? I told her directly this wasn't coincidence, that she'd followed me here, and I wanted her to stop documenting me without permission. She laughed and said I was being paranoid, that Portland was a small city and people ran into each other, that I was really starting to concern her with how obsessive I was becoming about her social media. The gaslighting was so blatant I felt dizzy with anger, the way she'd flipped the script to make me sound unreasonable. Other customers were watching us now, probably wondering about the drama. I left without my order, walked directly home, and called Monica from my apartment. Monica's response was immediate and unambiguous. She said Alexis's behavior had crossed from boundary violations into stalking, that showing up at places she knew I frequented after I'd explicitly asked her to leave me alone was criminal harassment in Oregon, and I needed to file a police report immediately to start establishing a legal record. Monica helped me prepare what to say, emphasizing the pattern of behavior rather than isolated incidents, the documentation I'd collected, the escalation from social media misrepresentation to physical stalking. I felt nervous about involving police because it seemed like overreaction for gym buddy weirdness, but Monica insisted stalking always started with behaviors that seemed minor in isolation and only became obviously dangerous in retrospect. I went to Portland Police Bureau that afternoon and met with Officer Jennifer Park, who worked in their harassment unit. I explained the situation from the beginning, showing her Instagram posts with romantic framing I'd never consented to, messages where I'd explicitly asked Alexis to stop, evidence she'd found my new gym and appeared at the coffee shop. Officer Park took notes and asked detailed questions about our initial relationship, whether I'd ever dated Alexis or given her reason to believe we were romantic, how many times she'd appeared in places she shouldn't know about. Officer Park said while Instagram posts alone might not meet threshold for criminal harassment, the pattern of following me to multiple locations after being asked to stop definitely qualified. She'd file a report and try to contact Alexis to warn her the behavior was being documented and needed to stop immediately. She explained that often a police warning was enough to make someone realize they'd crossed legal boundaries, though sometimes it escalated the situation. She asked if I'd consider requesting a restraining order, which would legally prohibit Alexis from contacting me or coming within a certain distance. The process required a court hearing where I'd testify and Alexis could contest the order. Officer Park gave me paperwork to review and told me to document any future contact meticulously. The next morning, I woke to 15 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail that made my blood run cold. The voice was Alexis's, but higher and more emotional than I'd heard before. The voicemail said she'd been contacted by police about harassment complaints and couldn't believe I'd actually tried to get her arrested, that she'd done nothing but help me, and this was how I repaid her kindness, that I'd destroyed her reputation and livelihood by making false accusations. Her voice got progressively angrier and tearful, saying she'd never hurt me, but I was hurting her deliberately, that she'd thought we were friends, but clearly I was too damaged from my breakup to appreciate genuine connection. The final seconds shifted into something threatening, saying she'd worked too hard on her Instagram to let me destroy it with lies, that she had 60,000 followers who'd want to hear her side, and I should prepare for consequences if I continued attacking her. I saved the voicemail and immediately forwarded it to Officer Park, my hands shaking as I typed the email. Within an hour, Alexis posted an Instagram story that tagged my account and accused me of harassing her. The story presented an inverted narrative where she was the victim and I was the unhinged stalker, complete with screenshots of our texts selectively edited to remove context and make me look aggressive. Her 60,000 followers immediately flooded comments with support for her and accusations against me, some sending me direct messages calling me insults and threatening to expose me. Within 3 hours, I'd received over 300 hostile messages from strangers who'd accepted Alexis's version without question, some finding my Facebook and school email. The experience of being suddenly targeted by thousands of people who believed a false narrative was terrifying in ways I'd never experienced, like being attacked from all directions by people who didn't care about truth. I screenshot everything frantically, documenting the story and harassment from Alexis's followers, then called Monica in a panic. She told me to immediately make social media private and block threatening accounts to save messages before blocking as evidence. Monica insisted I contact my school's administration to make them aware someone might be sending false information about me. The suggestion to involve my employer made the situation feel even more out of control. But Monica said protecting my professional reputation was important, since Alexis had demonstrated willingness to weaponize her following. I spent 2 hours blocking accounts and adjusting privacy settings, feeling violated by the effort required to defend myself against accusations I'd never imagined addressing. My principal called me into his office the next morning, and I felt my stomach drop, knowing Alexis's followers must have contacted the school. Principal Hawkins asked carefully if there was anything I needed to tell him about a situation involving a woman accusing me of stalking. I felt humiliated explaining the gym buddy Instagram drama to my employer, showing him evidence I'd collected proving the accusations were false, and I was actually the victim. He reviewed screenshots with concern and said he believed me, but several people had emailed claiming I was dangerous. Officer Park called that afternoon saying she'd reviewed new evidence, including the threatening voicemail and Instagram story falsely accusing me of stalking. She said the voicemail provided grounds for criminal harassment charges, and the story potentially constituted defamation and incitement. She'd tried to contact Alexis, but Alexis refused to speak with police without an attorney, which Officer Park said was concerning, because it suggested awareness of crossing legal lines. She strongly recommended I file for a restraining order immediately given rapid escalation and involvement of Alexis's large following in harassing me. She explained the process, the paperwork needed, the temporary order pending a hearing, the permanent order that could be issued if the judge found sufficient evidence. I spent that weekend working with Monica to prepare the restraining order petition, documenting every incident chronologically with dates and evidence. The timeline was damning when laid out systematically, revealing a clear pattern of escalating harassment. Monica helped me write the petition in factual, unemotional language, focusing on specific behaviors and their impact, avoiding speculation about Alexis's motivations. We included over 40 pages of supporting evidence, screenshots and messages, and police reports. The courthouse opened Monday morning, and I filed the petition for a restraining order against Alexis Monroe, feeling nervous and exposed. The clerk said a judge would review the petition that day and likely issue a temporary order pending a full hearing in 2 weeks. She explained Alexis would be served by law enforcement and notified of the hearing date, that she'd have opportunity to contest the order. The temporary order would prohibit any contact directly or through third parties, require Alexis to stay at least 500 feet from my home and workplace, and prohibit posting about me on social media. I left feeling both relieved and anxious, knowing legal protection was coming, but serving Alexis might escalate her anger. The temporary restraining order was granted that afternoon, and police served Alexis that evening. Officer Park called to notify me service had been completed, and Alexis had been informed of restrictions and hearing date. Alexis's immediate response was deleting her Instagram account entirely, which Officer Park said was unusual because most people just made accounts private. The complete deletion suggested either guilty conscience about content or strategy to eliminate evidence before the hearing. I felt relief the posts were gone and frustration evidence had been destroyed, though I'd screenshot everything significant. For 6 days I had blessed silence, no contact from Alexis, no messages from followers, no appearances at places I frequented. I started relaxing slightly, believing maybe the order had worked. Then on Sunday morning, I woke to a notification showing I'd been tagged in a Facebook post, which was strange because I rarely used Facebook and hadn't been tagged in months. The post was from an account with a generic name like Portland Fitness Community, but content was clearly from Alexis based on writing style and specific details. The post was a long essay accusing me by name of harassment, stalking, and filing false police reports against a female fitness instructor who'd tried to help me, claiming I'd become obsessed and vindictive when she wouldn't date me after my breakup. It included heavily edited screenshots making me look aggressive, claimed I'd followed her to multiple gyms and coffee shops, and positioned the restraining order as evidence of how I'd weaponized the legal system. The essay was compelling in detail and emotional appeal, painting a vulnerable woman victimized by someone who couldn't handle rejection. The post had been shared in multiple Portland fitness and community groups, and already had hundreds of comments expressing sympathy for Alexis and disgust toward me. I screenshot the post with trembling hands and immediately contacted Officer Park, even though it was Sunday morning. Officer Park called back within 20 minutes, and I could hear anger in her voice when she said Alexis had violated the restraining order by posting about me on social media using a fake account, that this was clearly harassment by proxy. She'd work on documenting the violation and would likely arrest Alexis for contempt before the scheduled hearing. She told me to avoid responding to the post or engaging with anyone who contacted me about it, just document everything and let the legal process handle it. I followed her advice but spent the day watching the post spread across social media, seeing my name and reputation destroyed in real time by people who believed Alexis's narrative without question. Several people found my LinkedIn and sent professional messages saying they'd warn others in Portland's education community about me, that I didn't deserve to have a career if this was how I treated women. Alexis was arrested Monday morning for violating the restraining order and held on $3,000 bail. Officer Park called to inform me and explained Alexis had initially denied creating the Facebook post, but police had traced the account to her IP address and found drafts on her computer when executing a search warrant. The evidence was clear enough that the prosecutor was considering criminal harassment charges in addition to the restraining order violation. The hearing scheduled for the permanent order would now also address the violation, and the arrest significantly strengthened my case by demonstrating Alexis's unwillingness to comply with legal restrictions. The restraining order hearing happened 2 weeks later in a Multnomah County courtroom that felt too formal for what still felt like Instagram drama. I arrived with Monica, who'd driven up to support me, both of us dressed professionally and carrying binders of evidence organized chronologically. Alexis arrived with a lawyer, a man in his 50s who looked expensive and competent. We sat on opposite sides, and I avoided looking at Alexis directly, though I could feel her staring with intensity that made my skin crawl. My testimony took 40 minutes, walking through the timeline from our first gym meeting through escalating social media harassment and stalking. I presented Instagram screenshots showing romantic framing without consent, messages where I'd explicitly asked Alexis to stop, evidence she'd tracked me to multiple locations, the threatening voicemail, false accusations posted online. The judge asked detailed questions about when I'd first expressed discomfort and what Alexis's responses had been, whether I'd ever given her reason to believe we were romantically involved. I answered factually and tried keeping my voice steady, though my heart was racing. Alexis's lawyer cross-examined aggressively, trying to suggest I'd misinterpreted social media captions, that I'd been happy being featured until I decided to use the situation for attention, that I was exaggerating coincidental meetings into a stalking narrative. Alexis's testimony contradicted mine almost completely, presenting herself as a fitness coach who'd volunteered time to help someone struggling after a breakup. She claimed Instagram captions were standard influencer content I'd misinterpreted, that she'd only appeared at the coffee shop and gyms because they were public places in her neighborhood, that she'd never had romantic interest in me and was bewildered by accusations. Her lawyer presented character witnesses testifying about Alexis's professionalism and kindness, but the prosecutor then presented evidence of the restraining order violation, the Facebook post using a fake account to continue harassment after being legally ordered to stop. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed screenshots of the post and police reports tracing it to Alexis's computer. She asked Alexis directly why she'd created the post after being served with a temporary restraining order explicitly prohibiting contact or posting about me. Alexis claimed she'd been venting to friends and hadn't realized the post would be shared publicly, that she hadn't meant to violate anything. The excuse was transparently false given the detailed nature of the post and multiple group shares. The judge ruled from the bench, her voice sharp with disapproval. She said the evidence clearly established a pattern of harassment escalating from unwanted social media posts to stalking to deliberate violation of court orders. She granted the permanent restraining order valid for 3 years, requiring Alexis to stay 500 feet from me at all times, prohibiting any direct or indirect contact including through social media or third parties, and requiring Alexis to remove any remaining content featuring me from all platforms. The judge also found Alexis in contempt for violating the temporary order and sentenced her to 30 days in jail with possibility of early release for good behavior. She said the jail time was necessary to demonstrate that restraining orders were not suggestions, but legal mandates with serious consequences for violations. Alexis's face went white as the bailiff approached to take her into custody. Her lawyer immediately said they'd appeal, but the judge denied bail pending appeal given demonstrated willingness to violate orders. 6 months after the hearing, I stood in my apartment that finally felt like mine again, no longer haunted by fear of Alexis appearing or my phone buzzing with harassment from strangers. The restraining order had held, Alexis had served her jail time, and as far as I knew had stayed away completely since release. My principal had been supportive throughout, and my reputation at school had recovered once colleagues understood the full situation. I'd started working out at home with online programs, finding I preferred the privacy anyway. Monica called regularly to check on me, proud of how I'd fought back against someone who'd tried to control my narrative. I'd learned that boundaries weren't suggestions, that documentation mattered, that women could be stalkers too, even though society rarely framed it that way. My relationship status was still single, and I was okay with that. Rebuilding myself without needing someone else to define who I was, or worrying about my image being weaponized by someone who claimed to be helping me. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.